My father removed my name from his will, claiming women shouldn't own property. That's when I handed my lawyer the document he completely forgot about. I found my father's will while cleaning out his home office after his heart attack and discovered he left everything to my brother Kevin, who hasn't worked in 6 years, because women get provided for by their husbands. I wasn't supposed to be in his office. Dad was in the hospital, stable but tired, and someone had to look for his insurance papers. Kevin refused to help, too busy gaming in his childhood room. So I ended up sorting through Dad's files myself when I came across an envelope labeled Last Will and Testament. I knew I shouldn't open it, but of course I did. The house, the investments, the retirement funds, the rental properties, every single thing was written under Kevin's name, for me. One short paragraph: to my daughter Grace, I leave my blessing for her marriage. Her husband will provide for her as he should. Women need love, not property. Her husband, 34, single, and run a successful consulting business. I earned triple what Dad made before retiring. Kevin, meanwhile, lives in the basement and sells trading cards online maybe twice a month. I drove to the hospital shaking. Dad was watching TV when I walked in. I found your will, I said. He didn't even flinch. You weren't supposed to see that yet. When, after you died and left me nothing? You don't need anything. You'll get married eventually. 34 and I own my own company. That's exactly why you're not married. Too independent. Men don't like that. Kevin doesn't even have a job. He's building his online brand. He's playing World of Warcraft 14 hours a day. Needs support. You don't, you're smart and, well, pretty enough. Someone will marry you. Pretty enough. You know what I mean, you won't be alone forever. And if I am, he actually laughed. Don't be ridiculous. Every woman gets married eventually. Even your Aunt Beverly found someone at 42, and she had a lazy eye. So this is because Kevin's the son and I'm the daughter. Sons carry the family name. Daughters change theirs. That's how it works. My business uses our family name. That's temporary, until you become someone's wife. I left the hospital furious and went straight to the basement. Kevin was exactly where I expected him to be, headset on, energy drink cans everywhere. Did you know? I yelled. He paused his game, annoyed. Know what? About Dad's will. Everything going to you? Barely reacted. Makes sense, I'm the son. You've been between jobs for 6 years. The economy is rough. I offered you a job twice. I don't take handouts from my sister. But you'll take Dad's entire estate? That's different. That's tradition. Tradition, you're 36 living in his basement. And you're 34 pretending to be a man in business, pretending I employ 12 people. Now until you have kids and quit. Not having kids. Sure. You're building an empire. He put his headset back on. The next week, I went through Dad's finances. The house alone was worth $800,000. The rentals brought in $10,000 monthly. Investments were over $2 million, all going to Kevin. Kevin, who hadn't paid rent in 6 years. Kevin, who ate Dad's food, used Dad's utilities, and drove Dad's car. When Dad was stronger, I brought it up again. I want to talk about the will. Nothing to talk about. It's settled. It's wrong. My father did the same. Everything went to my brother. Your mother understood. Mom died before she saw it. Wouldn't have argued. She knew her place. She was a nurse who earned more than you for decades. And she still cooked every night like a proper wife. I cook for myself in my own home, the one I bought. That's the issue. You should be cooking for a husband. Kevin doesn't cook for himself. He's a bachelor. That's different. How? Men need inheritance to attract wives. Women get inheritance through their husbands. That's insane. That's reality. No man wants to marry a woman richer than him. I'm protecting you from being alone by giving you nothing, so you'll need someone. That night I called my lawyer friend Giselle. Is this even legal? Yes. He can leave his estate however he wants, even if it's sexist. I sighed. Grace, she added, what about your mom's will? I froze. I hadn't thought about it in years. Dad handled everything after she died. Then I remembered, Mom had a safety deposit box downtown. She kept her separate documents there, said it was for things safe and separate. I never checked it because Dad said he handled everything. I told Giselle. She went quiet, then said we needed to access that box immediately. She'd come for legal support. I barely slept. The next morning, I called the bank where Mom worked for 30 years. The manager picked up. He remembered her instantly, said she was always kind. And just like that, I knew there was more. Dad had hidden. The bank manager told me Mom never complained, even when customers were difficult. He confirmed she did have a safety deposit box in her name, but I'd need her death certificate and my ID to access it. He could fit me in on Friday afternoon if I gathered everything in time. I agreed instantly, then realized I had no idea where her death certificate even was, most likely buried somewhere in Dad's files. The same files where I found the will that erased me from his estate. The next 2 days felt like I was uncovering my own family's secrets. On Wednesday, I drove to Dad's house while he was still hospitalized. Kevin's door was shut, game noises leaking through. I headed straight to Dad's office and dug through every drawer and cabinet until I found Mom's death certificate in a folder labeled Francesca Final. My stomach twisted just seeing those words. I also found her passport, nursing license, birth certificate, everything I might need. I made copies and slipped out before Kevin even noticed I'd been there. Thursday was packed with 3 client meetings at the firm. I tried to stay focused, but my mind kept drifting back to the box. What had Mom kept separate and safe? June noticed something was off. After our second meeting, once the client left, she closed the conference room door and asked what was going on. I told her everything. The will, Kevin inheriting everything, the box I was planning to open on Friday. Her face flushed with anger. She actually stood up and paced, saying Dad was stuck in the 1950s and someone needed to snap him out of it. She reminded me that I built my company alone, that I offered Kevin 2 real jobs and he still couldn't show up for either interview. She called Kevin lazy and Dad sexist, then asked how she could help. Just having her support was enough. She hugged me tightly and told me my mom would be proud. I cried for the first time since this whole thing started. Friday afternoon came faster than I expected. Giselle met me at the bank at 3. We followed the manager down to the vault. He checked my documents twice, then slid a long metal box out of the wall and left us alone in a private room. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents, a will, insurance papers, and a letter addressed to me in Mom's neat handwriting. The tears came before I even unfolded it. Giselle offered to leave, but I shook my head. I needed someone there. Mom's will was dated 3 months before she died. I read it twice just to be sure I wasn't misunderstanding. She left me her personal savings, her grandmother's jewelry, the pieces she wore only on special occasions, and her share of a beach condo I didn't even know existed. Everything was specifically for me. Not Dad, not Kevin, me. The letter explained why. Mom wrote that she knew Dad's old-fashioned beliefs about women and money meant he'd likely cut me out one day. She wanted to make sure I had something of hers, something he couldn't hand off to Kevin. She wanted me to have security, something that belonged to me because of who I was, not because of marriage or tradition or Dad's approval. While I reread the letter, Giselle went through the legal papers. She pointed to a section about separate property and asked if I knew what it meant. I didn't. She explained Mom had set things up before marrying Dad so certain assets would always remain solely hers. Not joint. Not community property, meaning Dad never had any legal claim to them in the first place. The savings account held around $80,000. The jewelry was worth maybe $30,000. The condo came in at about $200,000, roughly $300,000 total. All legally mine, completely untouched by Dad's will because he never had the right to give any of it away. That night, I took Mom's letter home and sat on my couch reading it again and again. I cried, really cried. For the first time since discovering Dad's will, Mom wrote that she was proud of me. My independence, my business, my determination. She said she saw herself in me, strong and capable, yet judged for being exactly that. She knew Dad favored Kevin, knew he excused Kevin's laziness while picking apart my ambition. She loved him, she wrote, but she didn't trust him to treat us fairly. So she protected me in the only way she could. One part of the letter made me both furious and grateful. Mom said Dad had tried to convince her to merge all her accounts with his. He claimed married couples shouldn't keep separate money, that it showed mistrust. But Mom refused. She'd seen too many women end up with nothing after a death or divorce. Dad eventually stopped pushing, but she wrote that she always suspected he'd try to leave me out someday. So she prepared for it. She'd heard Dad say 100 times that sons carried the family name and daughters didn't need property because their husbands would take care of them. So she made her own choices, kept her assets separate, protected what she had, and ensured I'd have something even if Dad treated Kevin like the only child who mattered. On Saturday morning, Giselle called. She'd already booked a meeting with Joseph for Monday, her law partner who specialized in estate law. She'd sent him copies of both wills and explained everything. He wanted to go over the documents with me directly and verify that Mom's separate property truly belonged to me, no matter what Dad's will claimed. Giselle sounded sure of herself, but I felt sick with worry. What if there was some loophole? What if Dad had found a way around Mom's arrangements? Giselle told me to breathe. Mom's paperwork was solid. She'd done everything legally and correctly. Dad had never had ownership of those assets, so he had no authority to pass them on. They were mine. They had always been mine. I just hadn't known. Monday morning, I met Giselle and Joseph downtown at their firm. Joseph had both wills laid out across the conference table along with a stack of bank documents he'd requested. When he looked up, his expression told me he'd uncovered something serious. He shook my hand carefully, like he was preparing me for bad news, and gestured for me to sit. He started talking immediately. He'd compared Dad's will line by line with Mom's separate property paperwork and discovered something major. Dad had included Mom's beach condo in his will as though it were his the problem. That condo was never his. Mom bought it 30 years ago using her inheritance and kept it solely in her name under the separate property agreement. Joseph showed me the deed, Mom's name alone. Then he showed me Dad's will listing the same condo as part of his estate for 4 years. Dad had been treating my property like it belonged to him. Joseph then produced rental records. The condo had been rented continuously since Mom passed, $1,500 a month. He had bank statements showing where those payments went, directly into Dad's personal checking account, not a joint account, not an estate account, his personal account. I calculated mentally, $1,500 times 12 months times 4 years equals $72,000. Dad had taken $72,000 that legally belonged to me. I said the number out loud. My voice didn't sound like mine. Joseph confirmed it and added that we could argue for interest and possibly punitive damages. Because the theft was intentional, Giselle placed a hand on my shoulder. But I barely registered the touch. All I could think about was Dad lying in that hospital bed, lecturing me about traditional values. While pocketing rent from my property, Joseph explained the legal terms. Financial exploitation, conversion of assets. In plain language, Dad had stolen from me. We could demand full repayment plus interest. This also strengthened any challenge to Dad's will, since it showed a pattern of ignoring legal ownership. A judge would not look kindly on someone who stole from their daughter's inheritance while cutting her out of his own. Giselle said we needed to choose our next step. We could file suit immediately or confront Dad first and offer him a chance to resolve things privately. Joseph said judges prefer to see that families attempted a peaceful resolution before going to court. I laughed. Short, bitter Dad wasn't going to make anything right. He'd been using my money for 4 years while preaching that I didn't deserve property. Because a future husband would provide, Giselle agreed he probably wouldn't cooperate, but said making the attempt would protect us legally. It would show we acted reasonably while he didn't. I agreed, not out of hope, but strategy. We arranged to visit the hospital later that afternoon. Giselle would come as my attorney and we'd present the evidence, give Dad one chance to admit what he'd done and talk about repayment. Joseph warned us to expect defensiveness and denial, but to stay calm and let the documents speak. I drove to the hospital with Giselle behind me in her car. My hands clenched the steering wheel as I rehearsed the words in my head. We found Mom's will. We found the separate property documents. I found proof you'd been taking the rental income from my beach condo for the last 4 years, a total of $72,000. All that money gone while you kept insisting I didn't deserve property in the first place. When Giselle and I walked into Dad's hospital room, his expression shifted the moment he saw her in a business suit with a briefcase. He knew immediately this wasn't a casual visit. His face tightened, like he braced for what was coming. I didn't bother with small talk. I told him we'd found Mom's will and uncovered the fact that he had been collecting the rental income from property that legally passed to me. His answer came instantly, like he had practiced it. He said everything Mom owned became his the moment she died. According to him, wives' assets automatically transfer to their husbands. That's just how marriage works. Giselle stepped in and corrected him calmly, explaining the laws around separate property and how Mom had taken steps to keep certain assets solely under her name. She pulled out Mom's paperwork showing the agreements she made before they married. The beach condo was always Mom's alone, never his, never community property, and upon her death it transferred directly to me as her chosen heir. Dad never had any legal right to the condo or the income it generated. Dad's face reddened. He said it was absurd because he had been managing it for years, handling tenants and maintenance, and deserved something for his effort. I asked when exactly he planned on telling me that the condo was mine or that he'd been pocketing the rent. He didn't respond. Instead, he said he used the money for family expenses and that I indirectly benefited from it. I reminded him I hadn't lived with him for over a decade. I built my own life, bought my own house, started my own business, and paid every bill myself. Whatever expenses he was talking about had nothing to do with me. That rental income was mine, and he spent it on himself, and Kevin. Things escalated when I stated the amount he owed. $72,000. Dad went purple. He insisted he didn't owe me a cent because he raised me for 18 years, fed me, clothed me, and paid for my education. And that was worth more than any inheritance. Giselle tried to steer the conversation back to resolutions. She suggested he acknowledge my rightful inheritance, update his will to be fair, and agree to a repayment plan so we could avoid legal action. Dad rejected everything. Changing his will meant admitting he was wrong, and in his words, he had never been wrong about family matters. His father and grandfather believed sons inherit and daughters simply get married. That's what proper families do. Something inside me broke then, the last bit of hope that he might see me equal to Kevin. I told him Mom knew exactly how he thought, which was why she protected part of her estate separately. She knew he would try to cut me out. Dad looked genuinely stunned. He said he couldn't believe Mom would hide anything from him after 40 years of marriage. I said she was smart to do it, because the moment she died, he treated her assets as automatically his. He spent 4 years taking what belonged to me, all while lecturing about tradition and women's roles. He still couldn't grasp that Mom's property didn't become his just because they were married. Even with documents in front of him, he clung to the belief that he was entitled to everything she ever owned. His voice rose when he talked about Mom again, claiming she betrayed him by keeping money and property separate, that she turned me away from family values, and that a good wife doesn't keep secrets from her husband. My anger flared. I told him Mom earned more than him for 2 decades while still cooking dinner every night, doing all the laundry, running the household, and never complaining about his outdated views. She gave him everything he demanded, yet still protected herself because she knew exactly what he would do. He tried to cut me off, but I kept going. I reminded him Mom worked exhausting hospital shifts and still came home to take care of everything while he sat watching TV and criticizing if dinner wasn't ready. She knew her worth, even if he didn't. Giselle touched my arm gently, trying to calm me, but I had reached my limit. Dad called me disrespectful and ungrateful, claiming Mom would be ashamed of me. I actually laughed at that because Mom left me everything she possibly could specifically to shield me from him. She'd seen this exact situation coming years in advance. After that, the conversation blew up. Dad's heart monitor started beeping faster, and a nurse walked in to check on him. Giselle collected her documents and stood. Dad pointed toward the door and told us to leave. Said he didn't want to see my face again until I apologized for dishonoring my mother's memory. I picked up my bag and walked out without replying. Giselle followed, and we waited by the elevators while I tried to stop my hands from shaking. She told me we'd fulfilled the court's expectation of attempting a peaceful resolution. We talked, we presented the paperwork, we gave him every chance to make things right. He refused all of it, which meant we now had grounds to take stronger legal action. She said Joseph would start filing the necessary motions to recover my rental income and officially confirm my ownership of Mom's property. I nodded and stabbed the elevator button 3 times even though it was already glowing. The rest of the week I tried focusing on work, but my mind kept drifting back to Dad in that hospital bed, furious and refusing to admit he'd done anything wrong. During our Friday meeting, June noticed something was off and asked if I was okay. I told her about the hospital visit. She said my father sounded like he belonged in the 1950s, not modern times. That weekend I cleaned my apartment, trying not to think about any of it. Saturday afternoon, Kevin called. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. He sounded different, not smug for once, more anxious. He said we needed to talk about Dad and the whole will situation. I asked what there was to discuss, since he had already made it clear he thought the inheritance division was perfectly fair.